Majesty, Maxentius has brought up troops from Sicily and Carthage. They arrived yesterday.
How many?
Tens of thousands. The country's teeming with them. Majesty, should we suspend the attack?
You see? From God.
Nobody knows for certain what Constantine's army witnessed that day. One theory is that it was a meteorite. But what it was is less important than how it was interpreted.
Put you on your feet again. You're gonna have a bankroll so big, when you walk down the street, it's gonna look like your pockets got the mumps.
I ain't never had those kind of mumps.
Remember, a pimp is only as good as his product, see? And his product is women. Now you got to go out there and you got to get the best ones you can find. You gotta work them broads like nobody's ever worked them before. And never forget, anybody can control a woman's body. See? But the key is to control her mind. You see, pimping's big business. And it's been going on since the beginning of time. And it's gonna continue straight ahead. Somebody up there turns out the lights on this small planet. Can you dig it?
Yeah, I can dig it, yeah.
Wait a minute! I got money!
Man, all bitches are the same, just like my hoes, you know. I keep them broke. Wake up one morning with some money, the subject to go crazy, you know. I keep them looking good, pretty and all that, you know, but no dough. When I get a bitch, I got a bitch.
Right on.
Remember that Mac the bear?
Yeah.
Tried to steal one of my bitches. Yeah, I called him up on the telephone. I said, hey man, come on, prepare and let's rap a taste on it, you know? So when he comes over, I told her to give him a little taste, cause he sure as shit wasn't getting nothing from me. See, that nigga wanted the honey. All he wants is the money.
Jesus, no. Tithe! Give money and you'll get the blessing. If you don't, nothing for you. What has happened to the gospel of grace? These charlatans have turned it into a gospel of works. And they have put people, have they put people under bondage. This is one of the most disturbing.
Church orders single mom to pay $1,000 in delinquent tithe. You know I'm going to say that again. Church orders single mom to pay $1,000 in delinquent tithes. The story was written Thursday, July 16, 2015. And this is how it reads. Remember when church elders said tithing wasn't mandatory? And to just give whatever you can? Well, those days are long gone. As more and more churches faces budget cuts and rising gas prices making it more costly for pastors to drive Cadillacs, church leaders are looking to their flock to foot the bills. One Florida church demanded a female member pay $1,000 in delinquent tithes or be removed from the church roll. Candace Patterson received a letter from Tampa Bay's Greater Mount Moriah Primitive Baptist Church. The letter reminded the single mom of the church mandatory contribution of $50 a month, plus 2 special assessments. The letter also demanded child or children pay $5 a month, plus 2 special assessments. It isn't unusual for church to shame members into paying tithes, but some says Patterson's church took it a step too far. Patterson posted a letter on her Facebook page where it sparked fiery debates on mandatory tithing and religious extortion. Patterson wrote, "If I knew a church charged $50 a month, I would have never joined, especially if I'm a single parent trying to make ends meet." But many of her followers saw no problem with the church forcing its members to pay what amount to private clubs' dues every month. Others criticized the church for hiding behind its tax-exempt status while fleecing its congregation. Churches used to be sanctuaries where parishioners could go for spiritual guidance and a sense of belonging. But churches have become a business, and churches profits from tithing. Patterson told ABC News, "It's like you said to me, if you want to be a member of this church, you need to pay this. If you want to find God, it don't say anything like that in the Bible." Georgia church kicks out 92-year-old woman for not tithing. Nephew speaks out. Church is not all about money, it's about God. I'm going to read that again. Georgia church kicks out 92-year-old woman for not tithing. Nephew speaks out. Church is not about money, it's about God. Here's another story that was done, and I'm going to read it to you. A Georgia church has kicked out a 92-year-old woman from its congregation for allegedly failing to tithe what is considered to be an adequate amount of money, despite the fact that she's been a member for more than 50 years. The woman, Josephine King, attended First of African Baptist Church in Bainbridge and was told she was no longer welcome to worship there in a letter which discussed her financial contributions to the church. The letter was signed by the church's senior pastor, Derek Mike, and said King has shown no support in areas of constant and consistent financial and physical participation. Letter of removal. Active members of the First African Baptist Church of Bainbridge, Georgia, have the expectancy to wholly, fully, and completely participate in any and all activities and functions that support the kingdom building process. This includes, but are not limited to, spiritual, financial, emotional, and physical support. Below is the definition of an active member as defined in the First African Baptist Church of Bainbridge, Georgia Constitution and bylaws. The First African Baptist Church of Bainbridge, Georgia Constitution and bylaws were voted on and approved by a majority of the active memberships and are valid concerning aiding with handling matters of doctrine, edification, instructions, and reproof. Policy 3 Membership. Section 1. An active member shall be defined as a member of the First African Baptist Church of Bainbridge, Georgia, that is on the church roster, has been in attendance for at least 90 days, which is 3 months, unless they have an excusable reason, sick, shut in, or is a pastor, and understand the policies, procedures, and protocols of the church. These individuals should also be active in all financial obligations of the church and all engagements and worship opportunities that are held at or in the name of the First African Baptist Church of Bainbridge, Georgia. The members should also understand the Holy Bible manner of handling disputes, regulations, and standards. The members should also understand church policies and procedures, the Articles of Faith, the Church Covenant, and the church constitutions and bylaws, and have the ability to explain them thoroughly if questioned. This is to certify that you, Josephine King, has shown no support towards the First African Baptist Church of Bainbridge, Georgia, and are in violation of the Policy 3 Membership Section 1. Josephine King has shown non-support in the areas of constant and consistent financial and physical participation with church activities and functions. It has been properly documented that because of this constant and consistent non-support, the First African Baptist Church of Bainbridge, Georgia, in conjunction with Derek Mike, pastor who has been given full charge of all administrative, executive, and pastoral decisions on behalf of the First African Baptist Church of Bainbridge, Georgia, does implement the following actions: removal from active status, or what is considered in the Missionary Baptist Church as suspension of active membership. This means that from the above date, July 3rd of 2015, is no longer considered a member of the First African Baptist Church of Bainbridge, Georgia, nor able to or expect to participate in any engagements, worship opportunities, voting processes, and revenues of the First African Baptist Church of Bainbridge, Georgia, and shall be considered removed from the active membership roster of the First African Baptist Church of Bainbridge, Georgia.
Are you ready? You want something? Take the cats! That's yours tonight. You want it? You want it? Take it! You want it tonight? Take it! The power of the Holy Ghost! Take it! Oh, take it! Take it! Take it! With the power of the Holy Ghost! The anointing of the Holy Ghost! You want it? You want it? Take it! That's the power of the Holy Ghost! You want it tonight? You want it? Take it!
So the question becomes, how did you get Christianity? So a lot of people who attend these churches and participate in things, they don't understand where this come from. We just been given something and we pass it down traditionally from generation upon generation upon generation. But no one ever questions, where did it come from? How did we get it? Where did it come from? Where was it established? So what I want to do with this information here is I want to take it back to give you its origin. Because see, our people tend to stay in something. Okay, but this is what we got to look at. If you believe that what you've been participating in has been beneficial for you, your family, and has given you inspiration in life, who am I to try to disturb that? I'm not here to do that. I'm not here trying to disturb anybody's faith. What I'm trying to do is, I think that now that we've come into a time and period in history where things are lining up, and we're going to need all the spiritual power that we can muster up based on what I foresee that's coming down the pipe. Some of you may see it, some of you may be oblivious to how things are lining up. And so with that being said is, in order for you to get some firm grounding, to get some foundation under your feet, the first thing you have to do is you have to take what does not give you power. Now, am I telling you that the Creator doesn't exist? No, that's not what I'm telling you. Am I telling you that a person may have been sent here that may have had the understanding, the wisdom, the knowledge, and maybe had the connection to get the power? That's possible. I believe all of us have that ability to do that. But what I end up seeing is that, based on something I had seen earlier today, that I heard of a story where a reverend, a woman who had been in a church for over maybe 60, 70 years of her life, she was now well in her 90s. She got a letter from her pastor saying, based on her non-attending and lack of tithing, they were going to relinquish her membership. I'm going to say that again. Here was a woman who had been going to a church for maybe over 70 years of her 90-something years of life, and then due to being at that age, sometimes, we're a little weary, a little tired. I'm not saying we as I can relate to that, but I'm just assessing that by saying that a person under those conditions may have health issues that prevent them from participating. There may be other involvements, the things that might be going on. As a pastor, I would assume that people like that would be making well checks, home care well checks on our elders and things of that, right? But to send a letter to, entice the fact that we're going to cut our membership from you because of you're not tithing, what kind of message is this really sending? And based on me about to present this is the reason why I'm doing this, is because I think that spoke volumes. This is speaking volumes too. This is why a lot of our sisters are participating in these institutions, and they're paying to feel good, to feel like they're part of something, that they are doing what is right, and you are being misled. And it starts way before this pastor. He just picked up the baton in this marathon that they're running, and he's continuing it on, and he will pass the baton to somebody else when it's his time to finish his laps. You understand what I'm saying? And so what I'm saying is, our people have to get to a realization to understand where things are coming from. Yes, grandma did it. Great grandma did it. And so we have a legacy of people who are very religious, right? Who are fervent in their devotion and their participation, and they pay plenty. Because if we are to look at the bank accounts of these churches, you will be blown away if you see the money that these churches are making. But look at the conditions of the communities that these churches are in. And yet they're supposed to be an institution that is supposed to be for their parishioners, their communities, their leaders. And yet, the church does not own the communities. The church is just its own institution about its own education, about its own agenda. Okay? So we have to look at certain things and realize that they have not been power sources for us. They have been really deterrents. You understand? They have been things that have been placed upon us to deter our power, our output. You understand? By reverting it and recycling it back to you as a feel good. Take it with you for the rest of the week and come back and see you next week. As if like going to a doctor's appointment and giving somebody a lollipop or a sucker after you gave them several shots. It was painful, and here's a sucker to the next visit. So next time when you come back, you'll look forward to doing what? Getting the sucker again. You understand what I'm saying? And so what I want to do with this is I want to give a little bit of a synopsis of the history, because I think a lot of people do not understand where Christianity comes from. Now, what we have here is, when you take it to the origin, because it was never about Christ, because Christ was something they invented later on as they finally had, let's say, rejustified or rejustificated the institution that was prior to them getting hold of it. Okay? And what we have to look is, before it was Christian, what was the doctrine before they were Christians, and who were the people who had it that passed it along, and then they end up amalgamating and stealing and extricating the people who were the originals. Okay? Now, from my knowledge and research, from what I've studied, I've come to understand that we had some people who migrated from the continent, or the place that some people call Kim, right? Or Africa, or Egypticus, right? Or Ethiopia. Many names this place has been named, but we don't know what our people have named this place. So we have to go on the names that have been passed down from generation to generation. Now, these people who traversed from that land that came into what you call Europe, right? These people were called at one time Etruscans, okay? Now that may not have been their name that they called themselves, but this is the name that was given to historically, because again, you know, historically you have to somehow, you know, distort the name so that you never get a pinpoint to who exactly it is. But as a historian, when you do your due diligence and you do your master researching, you can actually get to a certain aspects of the information to have a more specific, without them saying it directly. Because a lot of people are under the impression that to read history and to say the white man history, that he lies. He just doesn't say it directly. You understand what I'm saying? It just, he doesn't tell you directly. He will say things that are specific, and it is for you as the researcher, as the historian, as the seeker of knowledge to understand, to unravel what specific things and names and titles apply to whom. I'm going to say that again. It is for you as the person who studies history, whether you are a historian, whether you are just a person of seeking of truth, you understand, or just a researcher. It's not so much as him telling a lie. What he does is he's telling you the truth that makes you have to work to get to what you're trying to seek. See, names and things changes based on conquering. Those who conquer gets the right according to their history, and names stick, and then they be twisted, and then they're recited and rechanged and re-amalgamated. You understand? And so you have to go through the maze, and a lot of people are not willing to go through the hard work to try to decipher what has been given. And so it takes a trained eye, a trained ear, trained eyes, and it takes a lot of patience and determination and a lot of reading for you to be able to get to this. And the way that a lot of us have been trained, we don't have the time and the patience because we're so modernized to the brainwashing mechanism in the schooling that it has trained you to become lackadaisical as into what you're trying to seek. We're all looking for instantaneous, right? We want to just add water, you understand? Put in the microwave. But we're not willing to do the search because our minds are too preoccupied with other things of other interests. And so those things that seem to be what most important, we allow ourselves to just take the generalization of things and call that truth, and without unraveling to figure out to say to know. There's a difference between knowing than to believe. When you believe something, Stevie Wonder already told you, you believe in things that you don't understand, superstition in the way. So, we had a people in antiquity who were called Etruscans. And these Etruscans had migrated from a continent, but in history, they will never tell you that they were people. See, there is a consensus amongst all nations who write history that state subliminally, and it's a code of ethics to never to write historically that ties directly to Africa, you understand, or to the African people directly. Okay, you rarely find in history where it is direct when they're writing. Okay, they say they are people who migrated, who passed through, whose origins never resided They're from further, land masses. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it is for you to do the due diligence to know exactly the pinpoints of where these people are coming from. It takes work. It takes dedication. It's not going to be easy. So when somebody like myself who comes and who's going to tell you this, I've done the work. I'm not saying that it is, 100, but it's pretty accurate. You understand what I'm saying? And, it's a baton. Somebody's supposed to take it and go beyond what I have taken it. Okay? So, you have these Etruscans who come from a land who have knowledge and wisdom, and, you understand, they have administrations to understand how to run things. Okay? And so they establish a civilization. Okay? And in this civilization, they have government, they have farming, they have art, they have language, they have writing, they have mathematics. You understand? A thriving antiquity civilization. And then what ends up happening is you have these same people, Etruscans, who later, as time goes on, they will write them as Phoenicians. Okay? So you got Etruscans who become Phoenicians, and then it's the Phoenicians who are going to become your Greek. Okay? And then this Greek is going to become Roman. Okay? And by the time it gets here is when you're going to now start to get the formation of what we're calling Christianity. That's why a lot of people who follow Christian doctrine, the one thing that never seems to permeate the minds of those people is that they don't look at the fact that if Jesus was Jewish and you are Christian, then you need to be Jewish to follow Jesus, because Jesus was a Jew and you are Christian, which means something not right. Otherwise, what has told you in your Bible has made you different from the fact that what you're following. There was a twist in the story. There was a, stiff arming in the story. And so, how did this come about? Well, the Etruscan, Phoenician, Greek, right, had set up and had hereditary bloodlines who were ruling. And what ended up happening is these people who, whether through subjugation, whether through migration, felt like how blacks in America feel, that they did not have equality. They wanted to be a part of the system. And they felt like because they had the chance hereditary to be a part of it, that they need a political system that could tie them in so that they could be a part of it. This is where you're going to get your senatorium from. This is what in government they call the Senate. It's establishing back through this time. Now, I'm not saying it originated there. I'm talking about this is getting to the Christian. Okay, what are we talking about from Etruscan, Phoenician, Greek? Okay, and so as usual, what end up happening when you get people who are jealous or are power hungry, they're manipulating and plotting on ways how to get rid of that to establish and get themselves in. So when you hear the story of Romulus and Remus coming in and this so-called amalgamating this white version, because what ended up happening was a lot of people are under the assumption that the Romans were truly white people. They weren't. They were amalgamation of different peoples, but they were not clearly white people. They might have been mixed people, but they were not white people. And so what they did is when they were fighting those barbarians, okay, somebody came up with this grandiose idea that we could take some of these barbarians, bring them in, train them, civilize them, and slowly allow them to implement themselves into our systems, that they start to move up into the ranks. Does this sound familiar? Is this what some of our people think? This is why I believe myself, this ain't gonna never happen here. They understood how they got in power. Now you need to understand how they did it. And so what ended up happening was they took these barbarians, brought them in, educated them, taught them military strategy, and slowly but slowly, just like what you see in America, but this is why white people have a hard time with the migration or the migration of immigrants, of Hispanic, of Mexicans coming into the country, because they know that they will eventually overpopulate, and as they overpopulate and they become part of the political process and they start to implement things, next thing you know, they will start having certain places set up in certain things in the system that they are controlling, manipulating, and next thing you know, they got power. And so this is what happened in this aspect, because this same formula happens when you go back and you read the Arab history. What destroyed the Arabs? For a lot of people out here who call themselves Muslims, for the people who call themselves Moors, I don't really think they truly understand the history. I think you take it from the Elijah Muhammad and the Noble Drew Ali's version of the American historical aspect of it, but you don't take it to its inception and its whole historical point. If you did, I don't understand how one could be a part of it, but teach his own. Now, what ended up happening is they purged out those who could be hereditary of the lineage that could be ruling, got it to where it would just be a part of the senatorial people, right, which could be elected. Those were not lifetime, they had elections, and then they could slowly implement and get people set up. That's why if you watched that series of the Borgias, right, you see how that worked, right? And so what you end up having now is that they slowly implemented themselves, manipulated certain things to get certain things written, to get themselves certain political powers. Next thing you know, and they're part of the military. Now they're going to use the military to overthrow, subjugate the powers of, and manipulate them to, understand, under duress of military, to be under their command. Now, the problem which you end up having is, once you have people who were used to the original system versus these new immigrant and new breed and this new idea, you're going to have conflicts with nations, for the simple fact that one person or a people understood what this was all about from the beginning, and we know what is real. This is what you have in this country. The reason why they're slowly implementing all this stuff is because you have a certain generation of people who've been around to know that what they're trying to do, or the way that they're trying to encode this madness in this country, is due to the simple fact that the people of generations prior to were under a different type of tutelage, and they are not going to be easily persuaded into this new ideology. And so they're slowly, these are dying out, which makes it easier because they're constantly branded in the school the new ideology, which becomes natural and normal to all those that come behind it. So this is what happens in this time. So what you end up having is, you need something that's going to amalgamate your power to make the people submissive and subjective to it. Now you got to remember, the people who they brought in, the barbarians, didn't know culture, didn't have knowledge, they didn't know religion or God, they didn't know none of that. All that they learned was from one they became amalgamated in. And those who rose up into right to understand became much more of your leaders. And through it, it created a lineage in these barbarian peoples. And it was through these barbarian peoples is what we're still fighting to this day. These people who created their own lineage to make themselves a hierarchy, okay, based on their usurpation of how they implemented themselves in. Now you say, well, what does Christianity got to do with what you're talking about? Well, what it is that in order for you to get the people to go along, to get along, you need something that is powerful psychologically. Church is used as a tool to subjugate the people because everybody has an inclination inside them that there's a greater power that actually has created all things. And so if we can give you as people, and then we're educating you to the curriculum that we're trying to get your mind in, that's another thing a lot of people do not understand. All this is a game. All this is designed in such a way to be manipulated by the people who are willing the power, who call themselves controlling. This is how they use. It's a slow implementation starting from when you go to school, from the time you're 4 to 5 years old to the time you call yourself getting out of high school and going to college. These are all processes that will get you into the mindset, because again, in order for you to get a diploma, right, you have to accomplish a certain curriculum, a certain, you understand, standard that they consider that under this you have been programmed thoroughly to move to the next level. Those people who rebel, those people who drop out of school, those people who do that, they don't have the mental capacity to take in the stuff, and they normally leave out. And because of their mentality, I'm not saying that it's wrong. I think that you are intelligent when you do not, wholeheartedly taking everything that you've been given and making it be actual factual. But a lot of people tend to take it that way, and then they look at the people who do not as they're not educated. Educated in this way is not really education. It is you being formulated to fall under the mindset of the people who are ruling. This is how they command and control, because the church had a lot to do with your education, with your government. You understand? It had a lot to do with everything. So it's starting from here. And so what they did is they took somebody who also had a story, which is the Jewish story, right? Those people who you consider these white Jews, this is not originally theirs, but they were people who converted into, and they kept, because once they started to persecute the blacks and subjugate and kill them, the only people left were those people who had converted, who now took on the persona as it was theirs originally. And this is how you get in your Jews today, who mask themselves as the original Hebrews when they are nothing but imposters and taking on the persona of the original people. So here is a barbarian people, right, who had no lineage, no ties, no history, no religion. But here's another people who look similar to themselves. So they took their story, which is of the story of a Messiah that even the Jews of today never acknowledged, because it said he never came, for the simple fact that once you really understand it, he couldn't have come because he didn't come out of the lineage yet they claim that he's supposed to come out of, so he never did come. A lot of people will never understand what I just said. You will never understand that the story that they tell you in the Bible, and they tell you that Jesus came, He never came according to what the Bible stated because he came out of a different lineage. And so that's why the true Jews never said the Messiah came. Now the ones who amalgamated and call themselves Christians is because it's of a political thing, right? So what you end up having is you have the church is going to implement an emperor. What you're going to get down the line, what you're going to get to Constantine. A lot of people have seen the movie Constantine. Maybe you read the history of it. Constantine is going to come in, and he's coming through a bloodline that they had created. Okay? But and then so there's a story that ties to Constantine, is why I'm jumping to Constantine, is because it was through Constantine where you're going to get your so-called power to become the church. We must look at how the church kingship was made possible in the first place by way of a document called the Donation of Constantine. A document which led to just about every social injustice that has been experienced in the Christian world. All monarchical and governmental practice has for centuries been based upon the initial precept of this charter, but in reality its precept is wholly invalid. When the donation made its first appearance in the Middle 8th century, it was alleged to have been written by Emperor Constantine some 400 years earlier, although strangely never produced in the interim. It was even dated and carried his supposed signature. What the document proclaimed was that the emperor's appointed pope was Christ's elected representative on earth, with the power to create kings as his subordinate, since his palace ranked above all the palaces in the world, while the papal dignity was above that of any earthly ruler. The Pope was formally styled within as the Vicar of the Son of God, with the distinction of Vicar denoting a deputized or vicarious office. The provisions were put into operation by the Vatican in 751, whereupon the Merovingian kings of the Grail bloodline in Gaul, which is France, were deposed, and of a whole new dynasty was supplemented by way of a family of hereto mayors. They were dubbed Carolingians, and their only king of a significance was the legendary Charlemagne. By way of this strategy, the whole nature of monarchy changed from being an office of community guardianship to one of an absolute ruler, and by virtue of this monumental change, the long-standing Grail code of princely service was forsaken, as European kings became servants of the church instead of being servants of the people. The fact is that over 500 years ago in the Renaissance era, proof emerged that the donation was an outright forgery. Its New Testament reference related to the Latin Vulgate Bible, an edition translated and compiled by St. Jerome, who was not born until 340 AD. Some 26 years after Constantine supposedly signed the document, apart from this, the language of the donation was its numerous anachronisms in forms and content, and in that of the 8th century, and bears no relation to the writing styles of Constantine's day. The truly ridiculous aspect of this is that the donation overwhelmingly dictates, which cemented the popes as the supreme spiritual and temporal head of Christendom, has prevailed regardless. The fraudulent donation of Constantine was specifically designed to strengthen the power of the church, and in particular, the Roman See after the fall of the Western Empire. It purported to be an imperial grant by Emperor Constantine of temporal power in the West to the papacy, and is thoroughly misrepresented the territorial status of the Pope by vesting them with a great but false antiquity. It was said to be the document presented by Constantine to Pope Sylvester I, the first imperial bishop of Rome, 314 to 335 AD. But in historical terms, the key documentation of the era relates only to the emperor's grant of the Lateran Palace and other benefits and buildings to the newly styled Church of Rome. Even though implemented in 751, there is no official reference to the donation until it was mentioned in a letter written by Pope Leo IX to Michael Cerullius, the Patriarch of Constantinople, in 1054. However, by the 12th century, it had become the primary document of papal lordship over the whole Christendom and its monarch. And this is where you're going to get your church. Now, it's a document called Constantine's Donation. Okay? And according to this document, Constantine wrote a charter that gave permission that the bishops were the representative after the king, that was power given to him through Christ, that's setting up to get your popes. Now, this document of Constantine is what gives the church its legitimacy. But as time went on, they come to find out that the document that they used for Constantine, when they found in the Latin Vulgate Bible that was written by St. Jerome, they found that that was a forgery, that Constantine did not sign, because he could not have signed, because at the time that this all taking place, Constantine had already been gone almost 30 years. So they figured out that this was a forgery. So that means that everything that the church has been doing from that time till now has been a farce. It has been created as a fraud. It's a pious fraud. So the whole church in itself, from the Romans, because you got to remember, the Roman church is the mother, father of all Christianity. I don't care how people try to sever off and say, well, we don't follow the Catholic Church, but you can't be a Christian if you don't come from the Roman Catholic Church. It's like they are Nike. You know what I'm saying? If any brand, that no matter what brand, whether you like let's say if it's Derrick Rose had a brand of Nikes, and if let's say, look, Joe King Noah had, those are different names, but they all in the same brand. It wouldn't matter. They still Nikes, regards to the name of the, you understand what I'm saying? It wouldn't make a difference. And so that's the same thing with the churches today. You're still under the umbrella of the Roman Church. That's who they're giving their money to. That's when you pay your tithes and they putting that money to, you're giving your money to them. They said that the Pope is the vicar. V-I-C-A-R. He's the vicar. He is the representative of Christ on earth, doing the will of Christ. There is no organization, administration higher than. That's why the Pope goes around the world and all kneel. Even you seen Obama went to the Vatican and kissed and bowed before him. That was part of the ritual, the incarnation of giving him his power. But see, we don't want to do the research, and we don't want to know this, so we want to stay in the position of, stupefiedness and playing a game that we don't understand how the rules of the game is being played. A lot of us don't care. I'm going to do what I do, and we're going to move on. Well, that's fine. You can do that. Teach his own. But the truth of the matter is, you need to understand, because you got to understand the game and what's coming down the line for us. A lot of people cannot see what's happening. So you want to keep on going and acting as if things are getting better, that the plight and stuff that we're seeing on a daily basis are not really targeting towards you. They're not enticing black men to come out and really to come at them. This is what we're thinking. But all this is systemic, going back to the church. Because when you look at penitentiary, a lot of people don't understand that the penitentiary is derived from the church. You understand? Look at the word penitentiary, and you'll see that it is a word that is part of the church, and that's where it derived from for those who broke the sins. They put them in the penitentials, which became your penitentiary. So it is the church who's locking you up. It is the church. You're breaking the laws that the church has ordained. Just like who was the ones supplying the drugs, the guns, and all that good stuff. But we can't see that because we've been blinded with this so-called turn the other cheek and this whole thing about Jesus when you don't understand how they created this. So now, taking it back to this donation, this Constantine donation, right? This Constantine donation is going to be the legitimacy to the church. And based on this legitimacy to the church is going to split. The church is going to break up into two different factions. Because you're going to have one church that comes out of Rome, and then the other one is going to be in Constantinople. So the church had a schism is what they call it. It divided itself because of its ideology and doctrines. The East, the West, split it from the East is because it said that it started to be corrupt and it was only doing family business with itself. It was only giving power to its own family, and it wouldn't allow us. Now, a lot of things that a lot of people don't understand also too is the fact that it is the church who gave the papal bull to enslave black people from the African continent. It was your church who gave them that. But you ain't going to hear nobody talk about that. No one wants to look at that because then they say, well, then what am I going to believe in? That's what I was saying. Said, if the Bible told you that the book that said that no man, God cannot fit in what man has built, then how's God in the church? But that's see, because they simplify and make you docile in your mind as a little child. And because when you're a little child in the mind, you cannot think grander. You understand? You're looking from minute. You're looking at, see, it's like people who fight over pettiness. You stepped on my shoe or you bumped into me. You understand? A little, excuse me, pardon me, my bad, should clear that. But for some people, I got to take it to the 10th level. See, because you are a childlike mind. You have not matured. We have not matured as a people to understand the game that's been played on us. Some people think just because you are not in a cotton field, right, picking cotton, right, from sun up to sundown, that you're not still on the plantation. That you, just because you can drive in a car that you claim you chose, that you paid for, right, and you can go to places to spend your money, right, that you're still not a slave. Well, let me prove to you. You can pay for that car, but that car ain't never paid for. You know why it's never paid for? Because why you got to keep paying for a license sticker, windshield sticker? Why you got to keep renewing your license? And if you don't do these things, what do? They ticket you, take your car, repossess it, and resell it. So you never own anything, just like your home. You'll spend 30 years paying for your home, and the minute you don't pay the taxes, they're taking your home. Taxes proceed before the mortgage. If you don't pay the taxes, the hell with the mortgage. We taking your house on the simple fact because the same thing, because the church stated it. You own the house, but you don't own the land that the house is on. God owns the land, so the church owns the land. Understand the game. You gotta wake up. You gotta wake up. We got to wake up as people, because we are sitting here playing a game and not understanding they're about to put you back into the physical slavery, because there is nothing else for them to do with you. They have already replaced you. This is what the influx of immigrants of Mexicans is about. Now, once this collapse of this money happened, then what's going to happen? We're not seeing this. We're not seeing the game that they're playing. We're playing. We so focused on everything other than what we need to be focused on, what we need to be unifying on, because you can't see the game. Now, this schism of this church, or this split of this East and West, this Constantinople and this Rome. Now you know they fought because that papal bull gave the Spaniards, the Portuguese, the rights to be able to have slavery and take it over into the Americas, right? And to facilitate the royal business, right, of sugar, cotton, the whole nine. So the western part was like, well, how come we can't get in there? So we gonna break off because we found that this document that you created is not legitimate. So it was that Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, because Martin Luther King name really ain't Martin Luther. His name is really Michael. His father name, he was named after his father. His father's name was Michael, not Martin. He changed his name to Martin, but he probably named after his father. Remember the father, he's junior, so if he's junior, how the father's name is Michael, how is he Martin? You feel what I'm saying? So this same Martin Luther that they're talking about, this European Martin Luther, this German who used to be actually a part of the church. And because he was German, okay, he came up with an ideology and told that the church, that you don't need the church in order to be having a relationship with the Creator. It was he who came up with this that made them separate themselves, and they finally got a way, they figured out a way how to get themselves out of that. And so the king started to rebel against the church. And so this is when you start getting this, separation and faction. But going back, you're going to get a person who comes in history when the Arabs was basically conquered the whole world. But what you got is the one portion that kept them from getting it all was a man who came under the name of Charlemagne. Charlemagne is about 700 AD. By 800, they really say 800 AD. But before you get to Charlemagne, the people who used to rule the church before the church got to the Constantine were called the Merovingians. Matter of fact, go look at the movie Matrix. In the movie Matrix, you remember when they went to the table and sat down? Remember when Neo, I think it was Neo, Trinity, and I think Morpheus. Remember they sat down at the table with the dude that was sitting there with his wife, and sent the one woman over there with the piece of chocolate cake. Remember they did the metaphysical aspect to that, right? But they was the Merovingians. And he said he knew what Neo was coming to do. He understood what he was coming to do. But the Merovingians was our people. That was the black people who ruled, again, Etruscans, Phoenicians, Greeks. They were black folks. They weren't white people. That was our people. Or a faction of our people. Okay? And so what you're going to have is Charlemagne's father, which is Pepin the Fat, is going to kill one of the Merovingians' last kings, and it's the church who's going to inaugurate and say that they're going to now be the bloodlines called the Carolingians. You don't believe me? Look it up. Carolingians. It's like you saying Carolina. What do you think they named after? See, we don't do the work. We don't do the studying. We don't want to know. We just want to keep going with our lives in the way and going right in and leading our children, our grandchildren, and so on, right back into what we all think we've been out of. So we focusing on stuff that don't matter. We killing each other like it don't matter when we need every one of us what we're going to have to do when the time comes. Because it's coming. Obama is the measure. When he get his ass up out of there, they're going to say, you done had a black president. He done did what he's supposed to do. If y'all ain't got what you got out of it, we about to do what we supposed to do. But you falling for this symbolicness of this damn flag and all this bullshit and not understanding that all this shit is a symbolic game. Setting you up, dociling you up, getting your ass ready to go back into what they always wanted your ass back. Because you got to ask yourself, when they call themselves this Civil War, this North versus the South, you got some people who think that they were fighting about your ass. They didn't give shit about. Lincoln told you, go read it. He said, I'm only trying to save the Union. I wouldn't give a shit if the niggas stayed slaves. I wouldn't give no fuck. But the point here is, it was never about you. You were just a pawn in the game. And then one part you got to ask yourself is, when they was fighting North and the South, when they said we was on both sides fighting, who the fuck we probably was on the front line? Because one thing a lot of people don't realize. Let me tell you something. Do you not know that in the South alone, in the South, we was 20% of the population then. Today we only 13, 14%. That's today. We were bigger as a slave population in the South at that time than we are today. So when they fought North and the South, was this a plan to help get rid of some of the population? Because who was fighting in the front lines when they put them in them wars? Niggas. We don't want to look at that. We don't think that this motherfucker, because you go on TV, you watch these white motherfuckers all day, and you think all of a sudden they good for you. They nice, and they got you brainwashed. Wake your asses up. This shit ain't no game. Motherfucker is not understanding what's going on here. You stop. So you got Pep in the Fat who kills to get a lineage. And when they had the schism that broke up the church of the East and West, you have administrations now. The Pope is of the East. When you hear people talking about their Duke, right? Dutch, the Duchess, huh? What's another title they be using? These titles come from that schism of the church, that these branches made different types of bloodlines, of family lines. You have your Brandenburgs that's going to be coming out of there. You have your Hasselhoffenbergs. You got all this shit coming out of there that's going to make these factions. And they're creating your secret societies at this time too. Because all this shit is them fighting each other, trying to get back the power. And so that's where we at now. We at a time and place right now where people gonna have to start understanding where shit is coming from. And that church is a fraud. It has always been a fraud. How can the people in the book be talking English and John Luke? Where the hell is these names coming from on this place? And all this stuff is coming in Africa. Israel is in Africa. Motherfuckers act like they don't understand that shit. Israel is in Africa. So how a nigga name is John Luke, Paul, Peter? Where the fuck is they getting these names from? Y'all better wake up. These motherfuckers been playing a game with you and got your energy and power and diverting it. And matter of fact is, most people who got this book don't read the book, because the understand is, if you supposed to be serving, why are you on Sunday? Why do you go to church on Sunday when you supposed to be there on Saturday? Because you don't know no better. The first day of the week ain't Monday. The first day of the week is Sunday. But you wouldn't know that shit because you just follow what they keep telling you. You won't go see what all this shit is about. So here it is, they got you set up in the mind to be on Saturday night, you partying and doing all this shit when it's supposed to be a holy day, a day of reverence and honor. But you out doing, they got you fooled. They got you twisted. And they making you killing and demising your own self and sending your own self to wherever that might be. Because of your lack of knowledge. That's what that book keep telling you. The people are perishing because of a lack of knowledge and understanding. You refuse. You are stiff-necked, hard-headed people. You refuse to listen. You refuse to understand. Because you put other things more priority to what is important when the real thing important is right in front of you, but you're afraid of that. The people who are doing the most to you, you won't say nothing to them. But your own brother and sister, you can't stand them. You want to hurt them. You can't, huh? Tell you, man. I don't know what else to tell you. So, this church, this whole thing is a farce. It's a game. Do your research. It's right there. MrBlowsurmind. Come with another thought-provoking topic.